Okay, alors welcome to the new episode of a Thought Experiment.
Let's get right into it. This week's episode is going to be an interweaving of two central themes. The first being the book, Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher, and the second being the word vocatio. Now, set the stage a little bit. I just finished this book, Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher, which documents the life of photographer Edward Curtis, who was born in 1868. Now, in 1896, he photographs a Native American named Princess Angeline. At the time, Edward Curtis is a very prolific portrait photographer. He is known to take photographs of presidents, politicians, celebrities. He was kind of the guy at the time. And he sees Princess Angeline just very randomly. Immediately is drawn to her as an artist, like he sees a portrait right away, and he wants to take it, so he offers to pay her. Now, Princess Angeline is the last known Native American descendant of the Native American who started Seattle, the city. Originally, his name is, I believe, pronounced C. Alsh, and they had trouble pronouncing it at the time, so it turned into Seattle. Regardless, Princess Angeline is the last known descendant of him, and she's treated very poorly at the time because she's out on her own. She's old, she's very old, and Edward Curtis is drawn to her immediately. So he ends up taking a portrait of her, and has this innate sense within his body that this is what he's meant to do. He's meant to document Native American life. And he, a few years later, would become friends with Theodore Roosevelt. Now, Theodore Roosevelt supported his endeavors entirely. And what's so interesting is as Edward Curtis is trying to secure the funding to take on this endeavor, he wants to travel around the country and document Native American life, from their songs to their dances to the religious ceremonies. He wants to really immerse himself into this culture. I mean, it's a giant undertaking. And it's so interesting in the book to read about his troubles in securing funding. And while everyone supported this endeavor, they thought it was such a good idea, right? Oh yeah, yes. We believe in what you're doing. Yet no one was willing to back him financially. And you're talking about people who are the richest people in America at the time. Again, because you think of his background as a portrait photographer, he had connections to some of the most powerful people in America. And it isn't until he gets introduced to J.P. Morgan, who really wasn't going to fund him. And it wasn't until Edward Curtis lays out these photos of Native Americans that he had taken to that point, when J.P. Morgan is he's intrigued more, and he buys in, essentially. Saying that he's going to fund him for $75,000. Now, Edward Curtis's plan is to, over the course of 5 years, release 20 volumes of photos and written documentation of Native Americans. This is an undertaking that turns from 5 years to 30 years and goes from about $75,000 to over $2 million in funding. And as he goes around and gets deeper and deeper entwined into the Native American lifestyles, it's so amazing that the way he was able to capture portraits at the time. I mean, when you think about using film, it was a glass. I mean, you shot film on glass is the way I understood it. And it was such a large undertaking. And the way I see this relating to the word vocatio can be defined as a calling, summons, or invitation, especially to a religious, moral, or divinely ordained duty. And what it seemed like to me is that when Edward Curtis goes and photographs this woman, Princess Angeline, he immediately is like drawn from a higher being, call it, that this is what he has to do. There's no other choice but to take on this endeavor. And he recognized that now was the only time, because as I continued to read over the course of, these 30 years that he's documenting Native Americans, he saw how, essentially Catholic missionaries were being forced upon these Native Americans. And the Native Americans went from having long hair and all of these ancient traditions that had been passed down for hundreds of years to wearing suits and ties and having short hair. And he knew that it was upon him to document this. And what's so incredible is that there were so many people doubting what he could do. And he had this like sense of inner knowing that it was inevitable that it was going to happen and it was going to be successful. And it wasn't until he released the first few volumes of this documentation that people saw the value and the beauty and the importance of what he was doing. He used some of the finest Japanese paper at the time. He went meticulously over the photos that were being used, and he himself and his assistant at the time wrote the entirety of these volumes. And what I took from it immediately as he's trying to go around to secure this funding is how rare it is for people to be able to believe it before they can see it. And that's really where, essentially you think of a visionary, that's where it comes from. And Edward Curtis, he saw it so clearly in his mind's eye what this would become and what it was. And you're talking about the most famous, most affluent people in the country, and they weren't able to conceptualize this idea. And it wasn't until he put it into the physical form that now they're able to go, okay, this makes sense. And it just deepens the truth that you, if you have the inner knowing within you, it really is irrelevant what anyone else, thinks. And even more so, people were telling him he was crazy to try to take on this endeavor. And it's kind of perfect when other people think what you're doing is crazy. That's kind of the sign, at least for me always, that I'm right on the right track. That this is it's truly what he undertook for his life was a calling from outside of himself that resonated with him so deeply that it had to be pursued. There was no other option. There was no other way to go about it. And you just look at the people that he met along the way, and it just goes to show that when you're pursuing what is truly meant for you, even if it seems like it's not directly related to your vocation or vocatio, the people you meet will inevitably support you along the journey, even if they don't support you, like these people who were unwilling to fund him. Even if they don't support you directly, it's support in the sense of, they think I'm crazy, or they think I can't do it. Perfect. Thank you. Let me keep going. And so I thought it was very inspiring to read about Edward Curtis, and it was extra cool that he was from Seattle. And more so, you read about the cities of Seattle, Tukwila, Snohomish, Issaquah, and their direct relation to Native Americans, and just things that I never thought about growing up in Seattle. And it just goes to show exactly the fear that he had was that it was going to be their heritage and their history and their importance in American history was going to eventually be destroyed. And he saw it as his duty to document them. And it's only through, learning about him that I've learned some more about Native American history. So his worries were, extremely valid. And as we relate it deeper to the word vocatio, it's like, I like the word in the definition, invitation, because you have the opportunity to deny an invitation, right? Like he had this invitation, taking the photo of Princess Angeline and getting that little internal nudge was the invitation. And you have the opportunity to pursue it or deny it. And eventually, it's like it always remains there in the back of your mind in some way. And it's just a matter of time before you have to pursue it. It overwhelms you in a sense. And, as I thought about this and, related it to my own being, it's like when I related it directly to in 2020 when I got released by the angels. And I really didn't know what was my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? This dream that I had worked for, 15, 16 years for relentlessly was now just pulled away from me. And, crazy enough, I went golfing one day during COVID and I met this guy, Daniel Robertson, who directly changed my career in terms of, helping build a new swing for myself. And from there, it was just building blocks, right? But you think about Edward Curtis meeting Princess Angeline. That's the invitation. My invitation was meeting this individual, Daniel Robertson, who kind of shifted my brain essentially. And immediately I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I revamped a swing that would, carry me through independent baseball onto affiliate baseball again. And it truly became my vocation during that year of COVID to pursue this endeavor. And I'll never forget, I was selling a glove to someone on OfferUp or something like that. And it was this parent. And I went out to a baseball field where the kid was playing. And the parents were there and I was going to sell them this glove. And I go up to them and obviously they ask what I do, this and that. And anyone that's ever played independent baseball in their lives, explaining what independent baseball is to someone who just doesn't know is, it's like turning on a tape recorder and just repeating the same things over and over to different people. So anyways, I explained what independent baseball is. I'm going to go do this. And, people think in their minds, are like, well, what the fuck is this guy doing? And perfect, right? Perfect. And I remember him asking me, so how long are you going to play? Well, what a finite way to think. But regardless, I just answered it in the only way that seemed that was truthful. And I was like, I'm just going to keep playing until I no longer have the intrinsic motivation to maximize my potential in this sport. And that's what I told him. And I'll never forget the look from him and his wife as if oh, this guy is fucking Looney Tunes. And I remember looking at it and liking the way they looked at me, how crazy I was. And it's the same look I got when I first started jumping in the ocean in Puget Sound, in the middle of the winter when I first started finding cold immersion. And people would walk across, and I was never doing it for them, but I'll never forget the look the first time I did it of the people when I was in the water, and they were looking at me as if this guy's crazy. And my thought is almost as if, no, you're crazy for thinking I'm crazy. We're all crazy. But it just goes to show those two, especially those two things, and any endeavor that you go on to pursue that you truly believe is like meant for you, like there's no other option but for you to pursue it, there's going to be a very finite amount of people that truly like understand and support you. There might only even be, one person. There might not be any. But all that matters is that you hold on to that belief and that this is meant for me. And so as I was reading this book, it was just so evident that Edward Curtis, he saw it as if, I'm willing to die for this. There's multiple stories throughout the book of him essentially almost being dead. People had written in the newspaper twice that he was dead because they couldn't find him. And I mean, that's incredible in itself. But then you start thinking about oh man, it's probably healthy to be willing to die for something, right? And at the time, thinking back on this time frame when I, during COVID and when I was really training to get back, I was willing to die for what I was doing. And it was that's like the most life force you can have. It has to be done. You're willing to take any risk in order to pursue this endeavor, because your life now there's meaning. And now I think about right now, honestly, I don't know what I would die for. There obviously family members you would die for, but an endeavor, a pursuit of some sort, I don't know if I have that right now. But I know that I'm continually churning the wheel, into these creative endeavors, whether it be this podcast, writing, the breathworks, meditations, and it's churning the wheel, and eventually it'll catch, and I'll be led into the exact right spot to where the invitation is present, and I'm in a position to receive it. And you think about being in a position to receive. Okay, well, we have to strip away what is no longer serving us. And that's something that I've really focused on in this year, has been one, specifically stripping away people that just no longer serve, I guess, my pursuits in a way, because you're expending energy in places that it's desolate. There's nothing there. And what I've come to realize is, if I stop reaching out to these people, inherently at least I found that they don't reach out to me. So it was a dead end from the beginning. And I feel I've started to strip away those layers of complexity that were not serving me in any way. And through stripping that away, you come to a more simplified state. And in that simple state, you're able to receive the invitation that is your vocation. And we go through multiple vocations throughout life, right? Edward Curtis's original vocation, or vocatio, was portrait photography. He fell in love with it. And then the next layer to that was documenting Native Americans. Multiple vocations along the way. He ended up making films after photography, and he was always even after the 20 volumes were finished, 30 years later, he's old at this point, 65, and he is still kind of he's open to the next thing now that he's finished this endeavor. So I think about that in the same way for myself. As I inherently wind down somewhat of a playing career, I open myself up to the invitation of what could be next. Is it coaching? Is it some type of one-on-one work? I think it maybe falls under the umbrella of coaching, but I have no idea where it's going to lead me. And I love that. And I think as it directly comes into the question that I finished last week's episode with, which was on a day-to-day basis, do I see myself as separate or part of a whole? And I feel as though when I'm in flow of a vocatio or vocation, not vacation. Do love vacations though. Next vacation, I'm thinking maybe Greece, as I've continued to study like words and Greek words. I find very interesting in the Delphi, and some of those mythologies are so interesting. There's a lot of history there, and I think this is a prime opportunity for me. It's an invitation for me to go check it out, maybe like the first week of August. But we're weaving it back to, on a day-to-day basis, do I see myself as separate or part of a whole? And when I'm in flow or in vocatio or vocation, just want to say vacation, I feel very much part of a whole. Very much so. And when I'm not, when I get outside of those realms, I can definitely feel myself as separate. And for me, it's always, I like the feeling of cohesion, of feeling part of a whole. And, we're all serving this collective purpose, but it's through our own vocations that allow us to serve this collective purpose. And so I think there's, it's kind of like yes to both of those. I see myself as separate when I become disconnected from my vocation. So saying that right now, no, I don't feel separate, but there are moments definitely where I feel as a separate entity, because, you're inherently looking for those people who deeply understand this pursuit that you're on. And so, those days come and go, as opposed to, I think back to like that COVID time, or 2021 specifically, I very much felt part of a whole. And it's so interesting because when I got to affiliate baseball, when I got signed, I'll never forget showing up the first day when I get signed. You go to spring training, and it's like, spring training is just a hodgepodge. Like, you talk about just being like thrown into the mix. And it's oddly enough, I had this feeling in my body immediately the first time I stepped in, as if like, oh, this isn't what I'm meant to do. What I was meant to do was pursue my potential during that year. And then this is a cherry on top, and it's a beautiful experience, and I've worked my entire life for it. Now I get to live it through. Don't think, like, I'm very grateful for it and deserving of it. But I recognized immediately that there was some like internal disconnect between what I was doing and how I felt. And so, for that reason, when the time came that I got released, it was a perfect break of the structure of what I was in the invitation to find a new vocation. And I like what I'm doing right now. I think also, in Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher, Edward Curtis's wife goes berserk, goes crazy, divorces him, makes all these accusations against him, wants all this money from him, so he goes to court. In court, the judge learns that Edward Curtis is broke, dead broke. And the judge is like, but aren't you a famous photographer and taking on this endeavor? And he spent every single dollar he had on this pursuit. He was broke. And the judge asks him, like, why would you do something for free? And he just replied with, because it had to be done. How powerful is that? He took on this pursuit for 30 years without taking on like a salary of any kind. So eventually the judge lets him off. Like nothing, he doesn't have to pay anything because he doesn't have any money. And I think about, 2023, like 3/4 of the way through the season, I was really just like, really disconnected in the sense of like, this is not what I meant to be doing. Get called up to AAA, kind of finish the season out on a high note. And I think maybe okay. Then I end up signing with the Mariners, and I signed for more money per month. Like I was able to sign a free agent deal, and I thought that the money and the new team would really impact the way that I was feeling. And what I came to learn a couple months in was like, the money makes zero impact on my internal well-being. Yeah, it allows you to have certain options, I guess would be the word. Like you have more options if you have more money, I guess, but it didn't make me like happier, and I was still pursuing this endeavor that was no longer like my vocation. Yet when I was playing indie ball for $900 a month, that was like I would have played for free. At the time, I literally would have gone and played for free. And that's how I knew. And when I think about those years in affiliate ball, like I wouldn't have played for free. I valued what I was doing with a certain dollar amount. And so I think because of that, like I kind of know that it was no longer my vocation. And you look at Edward Curtis, he pursued this endeavor for free, literal free. He died dead broke. And then you go to now, his volumes and his work are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's so funny how oftentimes you look in history and it isn't until someone has passed away that the value of their work increases. And that's just, how it goes. It's all just part of this journey. And as I take assessment right now of like my current goals, it's just, I want to bring breath work and meditation and presence, or rather a opportunity for internal space to be created to people as accessibly as possible. And for that reason, that's why I switched my platform from school to Substack, which you can find in my Instagram bio. And I lowered the price of everything that I'm doing because I just want to make it as accessible as possible. I just want to get it out. And yeah, there is a monetary value that comes with your work, your vocation. Like Edward Curtis worked for free. You see the value of his work now. And there is a monetary value that comes along with the quality of the work that you're doing because it's your pursuit. And I think eventually, there will be a higher price for the work that I will be doing. But right now, for me, it's about exploration. Like I'm still in an exploration process, and will always continually be in one. But as I continue to refine the modalities that I think can best serve people, the prices will remain lower. And it isn't until I feel like the value of my work, which will really be one-on-one and in person in some capacity, whenever that invitation comes, then inherently the prices will go up because that's the value of the work. Don't you want, as a client, when you pay a large sum of money to do something, don't you want the environment to be nice and all of these other things that create the experience? Well, that costs money. And so with that being said, eventually prices will go up. Right now it's extremely, extremely cheap. It's $10 a month for access to all of these meditations, visualizations, breath works, and they're going to continue to expand because I'm just continuing to refine my own practice and trying to bring it to people as accessibly as possible. Also, Substack gives me the opportunity to write, and it's a very I guess the word is good. I don't want to use the word good, though. It's a platform that is meant for writing. And so it allows me to write, but also embed those videos for people as well. It allows me to grow a community, which is a goal right now, growing a community of like-minded thinkers who are on their own vocation and want to continue to expand and simplify in certain ways. And then it just allows me the opportunity to explore. Substack is a cheaper app than School was. And so I continue to, self-assess, see where I'm at, see where I can grow, see where I can change. I mean, I changed up the camera angle of the podcast this week, just in terms of experimentation, and it's just, it comes with the divine comedy of being present. Oh, we just got a little notification. And with the divine comedy of being present, that comes right into the observation that I saw this week, which was, as I ride my scooter to the field every day, I go over a river. And recently this week when I was driving over, I saw a car parked with all the doors open. And there was a guy sitting on a lawn chair and his wife was shaving his head down by the river, this old couple. And it was just I just sat there and watched for a few minutes. He just sat out staring at the river and his wife just shaving his head. All the doors open in the car, just parked along this gravel road. I mean, it's awesome. Awesome. I want to make this week's question something related to the vocation and the pursuit. So maybe just, do you think you're pursuing your vocation right now? In a true self-assessment, do you see that you're pursuing your vocation right now? And that concludes this week's episode of A Thought Experiment.